Hi, I'm Raj, and you're watching Rapport. First, understanding, then adjustment. That is how life should be. But oftentimes, what needs understanding actually faces stigma. Joining me is the amazing Ashley Turner to share her journey with us. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me, Raj. I appreciate it.
It is my absolute honor. And I want to kick things off with your diagnosis and how you came to have it. Because
Okay.
I know sometimes that can be a bit of a roundabout journey.
Okay. So I am diagnosed with having Crohn's disease, which is an inflammatory bowel disease. I am also an ostomate. So that means I have an ostomy. So that means I have basically a surgical like incision opening on my stomach where my small intestine hangs out like a little knuckle. That's what I say it looks like. And that's how I am able to basically go number two, to the bathroom inside of the bag. So that's what I have. The journey to getting diagnosed was, it was a kicker. I went misdiagnosed for about 15 years, with Crohn's disease. I got tested for Crohn's about three times before actually being diagnosed, but I had all of the symptoms of Crohn's disease. So like I wasn't going to the bathroom. I had like that burning sensation, and
Mm.
sometimes when I did go to the bathroom, it would be like a little bit of blood, in my stool. Like those cramping sensations. Like I had all of that. And finally. In 2002, I was living in Georgia at the time. I'm from Chicago. I was living in Georgia, and I was telling my gastro like all of these symptoms I was having. And he's like, okay, well, let's give you some scopes. So I don't have my colon. I had got that removed years prior. So I basically got like ileoscopy done, and then they took a look at, the rest of my digestive system. And I just remember waking up from having my scopes done. And I just remember them basically saying to me, you have the worst case of Crohn's disease I've seen in a long time. And, I'm high because I had, was put to sleep, so I had anesthesia. So I'm like, I don't have Crohn's disease. Like they told me I
They
don't
told me
have
I
it.
don't have it.
And I just remember the doctor like, yeah, no, like you have it. And I just remember like bawling my eyes out
Mm.
because for so long I was told I didn't have this
Yeah.
thing. And now I have it. And then to tell me like it's one of the worst cases you've seen in a while, it's like, okay, well, how bad is it?
Mm.
So yeah, so that's how I got diagnosed.
I can't fathom the outrage of that moment because you were gaslit over and over and over. And then to be told, oh, yeah, no, it's so severe. The rage, the absolute rage.
Yeah, like I was so high. I don't even think in that moment I was more so like the day or two afterwards because you still have to wait for the
Mm,
images to come back to make sure that that's what it is. And originally they thought it was cancer at
yeah.
first. So it was like that was the pre-diagnosis. And then I had to wait 2 weeks for the actual imaging
Mm,
to come back. Like he's like, yeah, it looks like Crohn's, but I then speak to my doctor, and he's like, "Yo, the way that images are looking right now, it looks like it could be a little bit worse. Like it's looking a little cancerous." And I'm like, "Yo, holy shit! Like what are we doing?" And so
yeah.
he's like, "But we're gonna wait, for that 2 weeks to make sure."
Mm,
So then finally we wait, and then it's confirmed like no, it's Crohn's disease, but it's so bad. Like I had fistulas. I had, from all of my surgeries, I had scar tissue. I had like a little bit of GERD. So it being so bad, like I had to be put on TPN. So I was hooked
mm.
up to a IV machine, like in a little
The
backpack that I could carry
nutrition.
around. Yeah, for nutrition, like 20 hours out of the day. So my world went from being, just having my ostomy
Mm.
to like now you're diagnosed with Crohn's. Now it's so severe, like you got to go get a port put in. You have to be put on TPN. Like everything just happened so fast.
That must have been such a whirlwind of a transition for you. Not only are you now coping with this diagnosis, you're having to wrap your mind around the TPN, what it means for you, and how did you cope emotionally with this whirlwind that you were in the center of?
I don't think I coped well, to be completely honest. I think I was just going through the motions at first.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's like, okay, like I'm the type of person, my mind goes into problem solving, like solution mode.
Yeah.
So I don't always sit in what's actually happening. So it's like, okay, you guys are telling me like I have to get this port. What does this mean? Like, what is a port? Like, where does it need to go? I work out. I have a dog, so it can't be put in my arm. It has to be put in my chest. Okay, now that it's being put in my chest, what's the risk of that? Oh, you guys have to create like a small incision through my neck and go in and put, have the port put in that way. Okay, well, what's the risk of running that? Oh, I need somebody to be down here with me
Mm.
in Atlanta. So, when I have the procedure, I have to call my mom. I have to figure out like how to coordinate that. I have to make sure my dog is taken care of. So it was just so much going on that like in that moment, I didn't really cope with it. In all honesty, I don't really think it hit me that I was actually going through all of this until like
Mm-hmm.
6 months later. So I was still like working when I would get my port changed. Like my nurse would be at my house and she would be changing my port and I would be in the middle of a meeting or I would tell them like, hey, like I gotta step away, like I'm getting my port changed. Um, I think it was two times. So it was one time when I was getting my port changed and the needle wouldn't go in and it was hurting so bad and I was like bleeding
Mm.
everywhere and like to the point where I'm like hyperventilating because like it's just so much.
Oh.
And for anybody that has a port, you know exactly what I mean. So I think it was that one time and then it was the other time I actually ended up getting E. coli in my bloodstream. And so
Mm.
I had to pretty much have like two procedures in like 10 days. So we took the port out and then like gave me a PIC line. And I got out of the hospital. I was in the hospital for 10 days. Um, and I got out the hospital. I was maybe out of the hospital maybe 2 weeks and had to go right back in because I had another infection. And so it was then where like everything kind of clicked for me, like, holy shit, like this isn't normal. Like this is a lot that you're dealing with. Um, and so I think those two moments is when they were like aha moments,
Mm.
but still necessarily not like coping with everything. I don't think I coped with everything until
Yeah.
after I was finally like off the TPN.
I think what you said is something that a lot of people can relate to because in the moment you're just like, okay, this is what I need to do, and this is my next step, and this is what I need to know. And it's like there's so much that you've got to cope with. Like, I wouldn't say cope with, but so much you've got to adjust to, and so much you've got to deal with and be on top of and manage that like there's no time to think or feel or breathe even when it's all happening and the amount of physical pain that you gotta cope with, it's like there's no space in your mind for
Yeah.
that to be in. And at this time, did you also have your BPD diagnosis?
Yes. So this is literally like right after getting diagnosed with my Crohn's, right? So I got,
Girl.
yeah, so I got my scopes done in maybe like May or June. I got my surgery done like late July, mid-August. So it was literally like back to back. And then it was okay. I had gotten my port put in, but I wasn't on TPN just
Mm,
yet. Like, I have to wait for insurance and all of that. But I was flying out. I was flying home to Chicago. So this would
mm.
have been my first time flying with my port. So
And
I
that's
literally had
complicated
to,
too.
yeah, so I literally like had to go to the doctor like prior to get the approval to be able to fly. And then they had to basically, that was the first time I ever got my port changed.
Mm.
And I was like, am I gonna be in pain every time you guys change this port? And then it was, after that, okay, now we have healthcare nurse out every amount of days to change your port. Now you have to learn how to keep your port clean, hook yourself up to TPN, unhook yourself from TPN. So it was just literally like back to back. There really was no breathing room. It was like diagnosed, okay, maybe a month to cope with the diagnosis, port TPN.
That is so intense. And even with having to switch from the port to the peg, that in itself is another adjustment that can be so much to take in. And for anyone who's watched videos on TikTok of people hooking themselves up to TPN, it is a long process. You sterilize everything and yourself multiple times, and you're still at risk for infection. Now, flying with an ostomy, have you encountered some challenges in that aspect?
Um, you know what? Not necessarily with my ostomy outside of the typical, when you're in air, it's going to be more gas, so your bag is more likely to fill up quickly. It was more so when I was on TPN. Um, I would travel while I was on TPN because nothing's gonna stop me from doing what I want to do. But it was the fact of having to stand there, having TSA look through everything, and you're already hooked up to this machine, so you're already feeling away. And I remember one trip I took, um, I literally felt myself like hyperventilating and wanting to cry because it was just too much for me. Like I'm hooked up to the machine. I'm in the middle of this public place. You're going through my items. And I dressed in a way where you wouldn't know that I was hooked up, to TPN. So now it's like out in the open. You have people looking, trying to figure out what's going on. And it was just very overwhelming. And so I think that's the only time medically that I've flown when it was just super overwhelming for me. As far as an ostomy, that I think I'm so used to flying with it that there's nothing that's really a challenge for me. It's to the point now when I go and I stand in a little X-ray machine, as soon as I come out, I do my hands like this because I know that I'm gonna get stopped and tested. And so they're like, I have to check you. And I'm like, yeah, I know I have an ostomy. And so it's like, I just know what comes with that. But outside of, running the risk of potential leakage, from my bag being too full, I don't have any like cons with flight with an ostomy.
Now, let's take it a little bit back in time to the point at which you first got your ostomy. How did you feel when you woke up out of that surgery and realized that we said bye, colon?
So funny story. I got my colon removed before I got my ostomy. So I
Yeah.
didn't do it at the same time. So it was when I got my colon removed, there was a depression like stuck to that. And I didn't realize it until like a year later almost. When I got my ostomy, I think I was at the point where I was just like, I just want to not feel pain. That when I woke up, I was kind of in shock. I was like, whoa, like this is what an ostomy is. I'm like, it looks like a little penis. I was like, what is this? Like,
It's just
because it's,
like that much.
yeah,
It's just like a
yeah, and
fingertip
it's,
almost.
yeah, and it was swollen, still. So I'm like, yo, this looks like a little penis. Like, there's a little penis. attached to me. So that's all I would tell people, when they would ask, like, well, what does it look like? I'm like, a little penis. Like, that's all I could say. I'm like, it looks like a little penis that's pooping. It looks like a pooping penis. And so um, I had gotten to the point where I had accepted the fact that I was going to have the bag. And
Mm,
I knew that this was my purpose. Like,
yeah.
I asked for my bag when I first got my colon removed, and they told me no.
Mm.
And I was like, well, I'll be back.
All
Because I
right.
just felt it. I just knew it. But I had gotten to that point where I was like, okay, well, if I have to have this bag, I have to do something for me that's going to help me get through it, but also educate others. And that's how shit happens started. Um, it was really, I tell people, it was really a way for me to cope with what I had going on first and foremost, and
Mm.
then bring everybody else into the fold of what was going on with me to educate. So yeah, so when I woke up, it was just like, yo, you really have I used to call it a sidecar. You really have a sidecar on the side of you. And, once I healed and realized like I didn't have to actually go sit down on a toilet, I was like, oh, this is cool. Like
Yeah.
I can poop, I can talk and poop, I can do everything and poop. I don't have to sit down, like I don't have to do any of that. So yeah, like waking up from it was more of a like it's almost like if you had like cosmetic surgery done
Oh, yeah.
and like if you wake
You
up
were
like,
like, check out
oh
my Botox, except it's check out my
yeah,
sidecar.
yeah. So it was like that.
What I really love is the fact that you went in and you said, I want this. And I think that very much shifts the narrative that exists right now because when I had previously heard of an ostomy, I first didn't know that it's called an ostomy. You'd hear these hushed tones of that and you never knew what was wrong with the person, like what was their diagnosis or what were they going through. You just knew that someone was very ill and people would whisper and be like, no, he has a bag. And
Mhm.
it was as though it was the worst thing ever. And I think for me, the change in my thoughts came about in 2017 because it was the first time that I met someone with an ostomy. I didn't know she had an ostomy. I couldn't see it. And then I thought about it because I heard from her all these things that she could do that I couldn't do. And then I was like, wait. This doesn't take away your life. It gives you your
Mm.
life back. And ostomy gives you your life back. You can travel, you can be well, you can work, you can study, you can do everything that you usually either bed bound or bathroom bound. And that's what stops you from doing everything that you want to do. And so I think when people find out that it's not this big, scary, horrifying thing, but in fact, an ostomy gives you life and allows you to love, that they wouldn't be afraid of it. They wouldn't think that it's something to shy away from. And I've seen you dress to the nines. You
Thank
have
you.
that style and you're fabulous. And honestly, if actually until I heard your story recently, I hadn't even known you had an ostomy.
Really?
Yeah,
All this time?
all this
Oh
time.
my gosh. That's so cool. So I always find it fascinating when I do meet people and they're like, I follow you online. And then they say like, I never knew you had an ostomy. And I was like, what post didn't you see where you could see that I had one? So it's always like so super cool to me when people say that because it's like, okay, well, I guess you are hiding it very well there.
I think it's not necessarily hiding it, but that it's not as intrusive as people think it is. Your ostomy blends in with your clothing. It's not this big thing that, you can't. I think even close-fitting clothing. you can't tell that there's an ostomy. And I think that can be reassuring for people who are feeling self-conscious about what a future journey with an ostomy is gonna look like.
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the reasons why like I do what I do, right? Because when I first started out in this journey, I didn't see people that looked like me, so it was hard for me to
Mm,
relate to them. And I'm a fashion girl. I love clothes. Like I like dressing up when I feel like dressing up. For the most part, I like looking homeless. But when I do like to dress up, I like to dress up. And I noticed that a lot of people would say to me like, "Oh, I don't wear fitted clothes. I only wear big clothes, or I don't wear bright colors, or I don't wear white, or I don't wear this." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't have that issue. I wear everything." And let me show you how you can do that as well. So, um, I tell people having an ostomy, I didn't start living my life until I got my ostomy.
mm,
And I tell people I would never reverse my ostomy. Like I would never change something that saved my life. And I'm
yeah.
never afraid to speak about something that saved my life. So I'm always, as you know, I'm always gonna put that shit on. I'm always going to advocate for us, not even just the ostomy community, but anybody dealing with any form of a dis-ease.
Mm,
Um, I'm gonna make sure that I advocate for us because it is hard and it can be a lot. And when you don't have people that look like you, it makes your journey harder.
yes, I completely agree with you. And I feel like this is where empowerment comes into play because something as simple as living your truth and living your life as a fashion girly inevitably ends up empowering the next young woman whose ostomy is gonna save her life. And she sees that she
Yes.
can do everything, wear everything, and go everywhere. And I want to shift now to talking about mental health. You have had a diagnosis that you shared about, and I want to ask, how has that impacted, or has it had an impact on your IBD?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed as having bipolar disorder.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always had like suicidal ideations.
Mm-hmm.
And to be completely honest, I don't ever think the two intersect. So I don't think that me um having the bipolar disease has anything to do with like the Crohn's or like the
Mm,
ostomy. I think that's its own separate entity by itself. There's things that trigger that have absolutely nothing to do with
mm,
the physical um medical diseases. And it's sometimes it's comical to me because I'm like, wait a second. So you mean to tell me like I can deal with both of these at the same time and none of them have
like,
to do
I'm just that fabulous.
with the other, right? So I'm losing my shit over here and literally losing my shit over here, but like I'm not doing it, together.
Together.
And so I think with the bipolar disorder though, that's more of like just life itself,
Mm,
right? Um, and just dealing with life and just things that's going on and triggers and all of that. But never has there been a diagnosis or a surgery that's triggered the bipolar. Like
yeah.
there hasn't there it may have triggered some depression. It
Yeah.
may have triggered thoughts of suicide, but
Mm,
it's never triggered
the bipolar
that
disorder.
like that manic high or that manic low. If anything, I would reach a manic high or manic low because of something else, and then
Yeah.
that would just like add to what's already there. But it's
Mm.
never been the very thing that makes me go into any one of those episodes.
So, one of the reasons as to why I've brought this up in our discussion is because there is a misconception of madness.
Mhm.
And I know this firsthand because there is a family history for bipolar disorder in my family. And with suicidal ideation, I'm no stranger to it, as well as the depression. And sometimes people need to see that there are other people out there that exist, that live their life. And yes, the manic highs and the manic lows do happen, but that does not take away from your essence as a person. And I feel like that's part of why you've mentioned it previously online, because people do need to see that, yes, there's someone that looks like me that deals with the same condition I deal with. And no, we're not mad.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where I've started to notice sometimes, not all the time, when I'm in a manic high, a manic low versus just like a regular high, regular
Mm-hmm.
low, if that makes sense. And sometimes I don't know it. Sometimes people have to bring it to my attention. So somebody that's really great at doing that is my mom.
Mm.
Um, she can tell like you're all over the place. Like
Yeah.
you're on a high and not a good one. Like
Mm.
you're spiraling. Or it could be more so like, okay, like what's wrong? Like the conversation is a little different. But she's very good at that. And it's almost like when she says that, I sit with it and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, this is a manic high. Because again, like she can tell, like I started talking fast. I have to do a million things at one time. Like I can't focus.
Mm.
Um, I have to solve every problem like right then and there. Right. That's me on a manic
Mm.
high. Like I'm sporadic. Me on a regular high is just like, okay, Ashley, you're doing four different things. Like pick one and just stick with it,
Yeah.
manic low. I don't want to go outside. I don't want to be around people. Like I just want my dog. And some days, like I don't even want her around that. So I
Mm.
take her to her sitter. Um, you know, Everything in my house is just everywhere. It's just overwhelming. I barely can function at work. Like
Mm.
I'm thinking about past things that have happened, and then the suicidal ideation starts to come in. So that's how I can tell, like, okay, this is more so like a manic low. Like
Mm.
you're at a point where if you don't use your tools, we'll be at another suicide episode again. So
Yeah.
we need to reel it in, bring it back. Versus all these bills is due. Where the money gonna come from, right? Like that's a
Mm.
regular person problem. So I'm learning even still. I've been diagnosed for about almost 5 years now. So
Mm-hmm.
still learning, you know, what the highs, what the lows are. And I don't take meds for it because I don't like the way that the meds make me feel. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been managing them. I mean, I've been managing this without meds. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of therapy, a lot of life coaching, a lot of shadow work, a lot of yoga, a lot of, things that make me feel good, a lot of learning
Mm.
what my triggers are, and a lot of utilizing my tools so that I don't have to be on meds. I think within 5 years, there was only one time within the
Mm-hmm.
last 5 years where I was like, holy hell, yeah, you might need to go back on meds. But outside of that, I've been managing without it.
I now what I really love about what you shared is the fact that if this is the first time that a person is encountering a discussion about bipolar disorder, they will realize that it's not something to be afraid of. It's
Mhm.
not scary. It doesn't mean that you can't live a good life. It doesn't mean you can't work. It doesn't mean you can't have friends and a pet and a beautiful life. It means that you look within yourself to recognize when the manic highs and manic lows are happening. It means that you are learning to listen to those who love you because they can tell sometimes before you. And of course, it's learning to love yourself through things like yoga and shadow work so that you can still be Ashley. And
Yeah.
I think is so incredibly beautiful. And
Thank
I am so incredibly proud of you at Equity in GI. Recently, you rocked the stage. You took us through an amazing session. And that in itself, coming from a standpoint where I had a partial awareness of your struggles, made me feel so proud because as a woman, to be able to live your truth, to speak your truth, that is so powerful and so incredibly empowering. And if there is a young woman watching who either has Crohn's disease and ostomy or has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, what would you say to her?
Oh man, I think it's so much you can say, right? And there's so many cliche things to say. Like, like it gets better or, put yourself first, like rah rah you, right? And all of those things are great things. I would really tell her like learn you for you and no one else, right? And I think a lot of times we try to put ourselves like in these societal standards or societal norms. And when we do that, we're not really being our true, authentic selves. But when you release the power that society has, like around that box that you feel like you should be in, it makes life so much easier. So really, really live for you, learn for you, and nobody else. And once you're able to do that, life does get, easier. There's things that I enjoy. I like my views on relationships and certain things are completely different than what a normal person would think. But that's okay. Like those are for me, and that's what makes me feel good. And I had to learn that I have to learn me for me and what I like for me. I cannot base that off of what society says I should be doing, right? Because if that's the case, I would be sliding down a wall because I'm 36 and I'm not married, but I've already been married, or being 36 with no children. I don't want children. I can't have children. So that's not a norm that makes sense for me. I love my
Mhm.
dog. I want my dog. Like that's it. So, learning myself, even at this big age, as they say, and still learning myself, is what the beautiful thing about having all of this diseases are because I don't look like the next person. I don't carry my quote unquote illnesses. All right, you're back.
We're back. Yes, you were saying you don't carry your illness the way others do.
No, I don't. And I don't. And this is something I'm still learning. And I would anybody, whether you're a content creator, I'm not an influencer. So I tell people, please don't call me an influencer because I am not that. But if you are like influencer, content creator, trailblazer, or somebody that's just trying to live day to what you see is not always what it is, right? So you can't base your life off of how other people are living their lives. And I'm learning how to be okay with things that come my way, every opportunity, every diagnosis. Like I'm learning how to navigate through
Yeah.
that. And even learning how to be a person. And let's just say, there's a young lady out there that's like, I want to be a medical influencer. I want to be an ostomy influencer. Is realizing that sometimes you're not always going to get the opportunities that you feel like you deserve, but you're always going to get the opportunities that you need.
Yeah.
Um, And so that's really big for me because I'm still learning that as well. So I definitely would want to give that advice. And before you put yourself out there to do anything, check with your mental to make sure you're really okay. And it's okay to sit in it, but it's not okay to stay in it. Um, and so sit with whatever feelings you need to sit with, but don't stay in them. Like pick yourself up, move forward, um, and know that you know your storm is yours to come out of, not anybody else's. And it's your timeline, not anybody else's.
Amen to that. And Ashley, I want to thank you so much for sharing with such heart and passion. And just know that you're out here making a huge difference. And I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Raj, as always, for being so loving and so supporting. I really, really appreciate it.